Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 190, cover dated February 1985. So the cover here, pretty horrifying image of Professor X melded with Caliban of the Morlocks. And here behind him we have this menacing figure of the wizard or sorcerer Kulan Gath, who was last seen in the Marvel Universe in Marvel Team Up number 79, authored by Claremont and John Byrne, which featured a team-up of sorts between Spider-Man and Red Sonja, where they defeated Kulan Gath, and he was imprisoned in this necklace that's around his neck here, but he was released at the end of the previous issue of X-Men, and he's now taken over Manhattan. So something else to notice here as well is the cover corner box, where we've got a blend of X-Men and New Mutants as well. The New Mutants feature in this issue, as too does Spider-Man and the Avengers. So let's open this one up. Cover of course by John Romita Jr., inked by Dan Green. Let's open this one up to the first page. I like this opening set of panels. And again, I've been speculating in my videos on Romita Jr.'s original run on X-Men that he was doing some sketches of locations around New York City. And I'm pretty sure he's drawing on a sketchbook for these panels. Remember, this is all the era before the internet and before Google search engine and image search and all of that. But really nice pictures here of the Brooklyn Bridge, from a couple of different angles here, and the Statue of Liberty, which in 1984 to 1986 was under restoration. And so the commentary, or not the commentary, but rather the narration is all about New York. New York, the Big Apple, is a place unlike any other. Now let's turn to a pretty stunning double page spread by Romita Jr. and Dan Green. There you go. There is Manhattan transformed into a version of itself from the Age of Conan, the Hyborian Age, which is what Kulan Gath is from. He's from that period of history in the Marvel Universe. And it's very, very cool. Looks excellent. Really good stuff by Romita Jr. and Dan Green. So the title of the story is An Age Undreamed Of. It's part one of a two-part story. And the creative team, Chris Claremont as ever writer, John Romita Jr. artist, and Dan Green credited as artist too. What that means, and it was pointed out, is Romita Jr. was providing breakdowns and Dan Green finishes in the inks. Glenn Swan, colorist, and Tom Orzechowski, letterer as ever. So let's continue, because what happens over the first few pages is we have Val Cooper at the White House giving an address to the president and assembled generals and other staffers regarding the situation in Manhattan. And it's basically a way of explaining to the reader what the setup is and how they sent some soldiers in through this barrier that's around the city. But the moment the soldiers entered, they were transformed. We haven't heard from them since. And what she says is those who come out the other side of the barrier don't remember their experience either. So there's a kind of an amnesia that occurs when people pass through the barrier. She says that the city's ruled by a wizard named Kulan Gath. Within his barrier, a different set of natural laws apply. Magic, sorcery works. Kulan Gath also practices human sacrifice on a monstrous scale. His victims are exclusively children, so that's pretty horrible. Repeated attempts to contact Avengers Mansion, the Baxter Building, headquarters of the Fantastic Four, and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s New York field office have failed. We have, however, managed to cite a number of super beings, which, along with the eyewitness accounts of escapees, have confirmed that those heroes too have been transformed. And then we get this visual of the different heroes in their John Romita Jr. designed Hyborian Age costumes. So we've got Captain America, Wasp, Star Fox, Vision, Scarlet Witch from the Avengers, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Storm, and Rogue from the X-Men, of course. And here in the middle, we've got Spider-Man, who hasn't been affected by the spell. So Val makes the point, for some reason Spider-Man seems unaffected. We've no idea why. We'll learn a little later on the why of that. And this bigot here at the briefing is disgusted that that the X-Men are up there. lined up there along with the Avengers as heroes. What's the idea? Why one of their members, that girl Rogue, is a known criminal, and this other guy says filthy mutant vermin? This whole mess is probably their fault. They ought to be stamped out once and for all. And of course, it's not the X-Men's fault what has happened in New York. And then we have this general who says that when he was 20, he was a liberator of Buchenwald. And he says he'll carry the memory of that awful day with him till he dies. Last night I saw some pipsqueak racist TV commentator talking in terms that would have made Adolf Hitler proud, telling his audience to be on the lookout for muties. And if any are found among friends or family or even your own children, to get rid of them. Is that what we want for ourselves and our posterity? Is that what our country's coming to? So I love the way that Claremont is including, this large theme of prejudice, bigotry against mutants in the Marvel Universe, and how he works it into even the highest levels of politics and governance. That debate between those who want to be more inclusive and those who want to exclude mutants. So Val basically says they've got bigger fish to fry now, and she's hoping that they can get a second chance to figure out what's going on in Manhattan and stop it before it spreads to the rest of the world. And then we pick up with Storm. So in the previous issue of X-Men, Storm was wished farewell by the X-Men as she was aboard a ship that was going to sail to Kenya because she wanted, in her new state of not having access to her mutant powers, she wanted to reconnect with her Kenyan roots. So she awakens on the ship, but it's been transformed, of course, because of Kulan Gath's spell. And we're told she wakes achy and out of sorts from a fitful sleep shot through with strange and terrible dreams. She senses a fundamental wrongness she does not understand and cannot explain. But is it within her or the world around her? All seems as it should be, has ever been, yet it does not. So Aurora is picking up on something about the ensorcelment of the world around her. She's intuiting that something's wrong, and then she's interrupted by the arrival of Sunder of the Morlocks and Callisto too, and they're there to enslave Storm on the orders of Kulan Gath, who's their boss. And so Sunder tries to wrap this collar around Storm and brand her. And of course, she maneuvers out of the way. And then we get this kind of few panels of daring do on Storm's part as she rides one of the cut halyards to the masthead and prays the captain brought no archers. And indeed, the captain did not. So then we've got Callisto going after Storm. The witch is mine, she says. So their rivalry from beforehand continues over into this world of Conan. This is a great shot here of the masthead and Storm atop it there, and Callisto coming after her. Really great work by John Romita Jr. Just think about what he's been tasked to draw here. He's doing it so well, proving himself to be so versatile as an artist. So Callisto says, my master would have preferred you alive, Storm, but I think he'll shed no tears when I present him with your corpse instead. So she's out for blood. This is a great page of fighting between the pair. So Callisto gets the better of Storm, rips her across the belly, but that prompts Storm, the pain prompts her to realize that the world has been turned topsy-turvy, and suddenly she's certain of who and what she is. And that person has nothing to do with this time. Before she's even fully aware of the realization, however, it is overwhelmed by another more immediate one. So the ship goes on fire, and in one smooth movement, she sweeps herself and Callisto off the boom. So they dive into the water, and Storm, canny and clever here, makes sure that Callisto bears the brunt of the impact as they hit the water. So Callisto's stunned. We see the wooden ship burning here in the background. Great work again by Romita Jr. and Dan Green. And then Storm swims through the barrier, and there we've got a modern ship out on the water, and it picks them up as it turns out. And then we're back into the ensorcelled Manhattan and Kulan Gath's throne room. And he has there Professor X, who's wearing Conan, the Age of Conan style costume. kind of represented as a rival wizard. And what Kulan Gath does is he casts a spell that combines Professor X with Caliban, the Morlock, and we get this horrifying composite being. Really creepy design work by Romita Jr. And I love the way it gives an opportunity for Dan Green to use his brush so effectively on the various aspects, the limbs and other physical aspects of this composite horror monster creature. So Kulan Gath talks about how only a few have been able to escape his spell. And that includes Doctor Strange, who hasn't been changed. He was able to counteract the initial enchantment of Kulan Gath's, but otherwise Kulan Gath has him as a prisoner. He also talks about how everyone save the accursed man spider, that's the way he refers to Spider-Man, has been transformed by my enchantment. They are already under my influence, so that no matter how valiantly they struggle, the final victory will ever be mine. He alone was spared. He alone is free to know the truth. Yet that knowledge will not save him. It will only make him suffer all the more. So as I said, in Marvel Team Up number 79, Spider-Man was instrumental in imprisoning Kulan Gath in that necklace that he wears about his neck. And so he has got it out, like he is gunning for Spider-Man, so to speak, or really he wants his revenge on Spider-Man. He wants Spider-Man to despair, and that's why he's left him untouched by his spell. And he's also sent the Morlocks after the dearly hated foe, the accursed hero Man-Spider. So we're going to see Man-Spider soon enough now. And then we pick up with, in Kulan Gath's palace, we have the arrival of some prisoners. These are the New Mutants, and one of them here, Warlock, has been unaffected by Kulan Gath's spell, but he is presenting himself in a humanoid form rather than his techno-organic form. And when Kulan Gath uses his powers to transform Rain into her feral wolfsbane form, Warlock is so horrified that he transforms into his techno-organic self and he flees. And he thinks to himself, they could do self grievous harm. This is the transformed New Mutants. Worse, self might do the same to them. Better to flee, as self always does to self's eternal shame. So he's out of it now. And Kulan Gath commands Xavier to come forth. And this creature speaks as both Xavier and Caliban, and they appear to be obedient to Kulan Gath, but Xavier resists, but Kulan Gath basically overwhelms Professor X with his enchantments. In your own world, he says, your proper time, your true identity, you might prove my equal, but my magics have reshaped reality in my image. Everything, everyone in it is my creation. So he's a pure domineering tyrant. And so the creature, the combined composite creature, snaps back to obedience. But meanwhile, in the shadows, someone else who was on Manhattan Island at the time of the spell that Kulan Gath made was and is Selene, because she was there in the Hellfire Club on the Upper East Side, and she has been unaffected by Kulan Gath's spell because she's a sorceress who was old, her power feared when this world was in its infancy. So she's even older than Kulan Gath. And I like the storytelling here by Romita Jr. As she hides behind these columns and then disappears. And then we go uptown and we have Rachel Summers and Amara Magma, who also, of course, were there in Manhattan in the Upper East Side at the end of the previous issue, and Selene has come for them. And so she deals with these barbarians that were about to have their way with Rachel and Amara, and instead she addresses them as Selene. They don't remember her because they're amnesiac in respect of their lives before Kulan Gath's spell. So what does Selene want with Rachel and Amara now? And then we switch to Hoboken, New Jersey, just across the Hudson River. And we have Storm and Callisto, who've been taken in by the FBI and are resting, but they're under house arrest. And Selene appears to them, and she's got a message. The ensorcelment of your city is the work of an old and deadly foe. If he's not stopped in soon, his spell will become irreversible and will spread from this source to engulf the entire planet. So those are the stakes. And Selene offers them a deal to go back in, but they'll remember the essence of their conversation, that Kulan Gath is an evil which must be destroyed, and that Selene is ever your friend and ally. So can they trust her, of course, is the most obvious question one would ask. And Storm is picking the lock of the door where they're being held. And Callisto asks her, you believe her? No. Trust her? Never. So I like that. I like that piece of dialogue and that interaction between Storm and Callisto. So Storm explains to Callisto that she didn't just blow the door open with her elemental powers because they no longer exist. And Callisto's shocked. I like the silhouetting here in this panel. That's very nicely done by Romita Jr. and Dan Green. So Storm says it's not important how it happened, but interesting, Callisto says, it is to me. And Storm replies, I didn't know you cared. And Callisto says, you won my place in fair combat as leader of the Morlocks. I wanted to take it back the same way. That means nothing if you're just a human. More importantly, and this is interesting, Callisto says, we take care of our own. If someone did this to you and you don't take his life, I will. So now that Storm is leader of the Morlocks, obligations and duties go both ways. And Callisto feels an obligation and duty to take out the person responsible. Of course, we all know that that's Forge. So here we have them escaping from the facility where they were being held, and they use a Morlock tunnel that extends all the way over to Hoboken to get back into Manhattan. And then we pick up finally with our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And this is a very interesting little device here. It turns out that Spider-Man is the only one who speaks English in Manhattan, and so all of his thoughts and dialogue have these angled brackets around them, which is the usual device to indicate that someone's speaking a foreign language. So I just find that funny, that little detail. Also, just look at the hatching of the shadows here in the background of medieval style Manhattan. Really, really nice work by Dan Green on the inking there. And so Spider-Man is fleeing, as it turns out, the ensorcelled, I like that word, ensorcelled New Mutants. And he makes his way into this tavern. And of course, who turns out to be in the tavern? You know, it's the best, in best Marvel Universe fashion, except for the Avengers. And of course, they are in their medieval sword and sorcery versions. So just as the New Mutants are getting the better of Spider-Man, whose powers aren't 100% in this enchanted Manhattan, Captain America intervenes. And so, and there arrives also, or it turns out rather, that in the tavern there's also Nightcrawler and Rogue, who are a pair, and there also arrives through the wall Colossus and Sunder. So really nice work. And over here in the corner, because I was wondering when I was rereading this issue initially, okay, so all the New Mutants are there, but where was Illyana? So it turns out Illyana, who herself is a sorceress, like an apprentice sorceress, wasn't captured, wasn't one of the captured New Mutants that Kulan Gath is now controlling. So she is a wild card, and she's there. She happens to be there in the tavern too. So then we get a melee. And I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't get a couple of pages of Romita Jr. showing off the battle royale here in the tavern. Instead, we switch to the Morlock tunnel, and it's just arrived at the point of this enchanted barrier, and Storm and Callisto are getting ready to go through. And as they come through the other side, of course, their costumes change into medieval style. And this is an interesting piece of narrative captioning by Claremont. Emerging a step later from the barrier are a hard-bitten mercenary warrior, that's Callisto, and a sorceress princess of a house that was old before the dawn of history, restored to perfect health by Selene's enchantment. That's so interesting because Claremont at this time in the whole midst of depowering Storm and sending her back to Africa, was going to explore the fact that Storm's ancestry is from a line of sorceress priestesses from East Africa that go all the way back to the origin of the human species. And that was a hell of an idea. So he's playing around with that also in the Dire Wreath few issues, that Storm had a particular resilience when it came to the magic spells that the Dire Wreaths were casting. So this was all part of a plan that Claremont had that wasn't fully realized because of his abandonment of the X-Men in 1991 because of those infamous battles for control of the authorship of the title with Bob Harris at the time and Jim Lee. So they happen just at the moment. Oh no, in the tunnels, of course, the Morlocks are under Kulan Gath's control, so they're going to have to fight their way through these Morlocks. And then we're back at the tavern, and it looks like the Avengers and the X-Men are surrounded. But Captain America says, so long as we live, we have hope. And finally, Illyana acts and reveals her true self and manifests her soul sword, which the narrative caption makes plain is the soul sword is the ultimate expression of her power as a sorceress. No magical entity or spell can withstand it, as her ensorcelled brother Peter discovers. So by striking him with the soul sword, she frees him from Kulan Gath's spell and everyone else that she touches with the soul sword. But she's just like a 13-year-old girl, and these huge hulking Morlocks get the better of her until Selene arrives and uses her powers to restrain. Remember, her powers are, she's got complete control of inanimate matter. So she grabs the Morlocks and other warriors of Kulan Gath with the floors and the walls, and Illyana is freed. And then the New Mutants under Kulan Gath's control, they flee with Spider-Man. They take Spider-Man prisoner with them back to Kulan Gath, and Nightcrawler says they're gone, vanished, fled. So they've won, but Captain America's got a question. Who came to her aid and why? She struck with a merciless brutality that matched our foes. So here we have the manifestation of Selene, and she's brought bodily Amara and Rachel, and she says, these are her children, and I was far gentler than they would have been with you, dear Captain, in similar circumstances. At least their end was quick and relatively painless. Your agonies at Kulan Gath's hands would defy description. I saved you from that. In return, I require your aid against the fell spectre who has seized your city. But behind her, this image appears and says, Selene, weren't you always saying that overconfidence? So she's taken by surprise. Would prove the death of me. And it's Kulan Gath. I like the imagery here where he swallows her in his mouth. This kind of magical manifestation of his face. And he says, what an unexpected pleasure to meet once more so hated a foe from the old days, and remove her with such consummate ease. Your pathetic rebellion will perish with her, but I can and will be merciful to those cold mutants. Abandon your so-called comrades who would sooner stab you in the back than accept you into their hearts and homes. I offer you the wealth of ages, power, glory, all the pleasures you can imagine in return for your loyal service. Decide quickly, my friends. I shall not ask again. So then Storm and Callisto arrive a touch too late because they were delayed by having to battle their way through those Morlocks. And then they already disappeared. This is a little bit unclear. So we get this caption minutes later. So obviously they, what would you say, like dialogue with the Avengers and the X-Men, and they're gone. They've left the tavern. So Kulan Gath's men arrive too late. The rebels, they're gone. So then we're back in Kulan Gath's throne room, He wants to know where they are gone. And Caliban Xavier says he's seeking but cannot find. And Selene, who's captured here, is sarcastic. What a pity. Could it be, dear Kulan, there are limitations to your abilities, that you are perhaps not quite so omnipotent as you like to think? Now, on these last few pages, we're on the last 3 pages now, it is clear that there's a bit of a deadline pressure here, and Dan Green is definitely inking these pages at speed. There's less care taken over them. He's definitely moving quickly. You can really see it in this panel, the rendering of the ink lines on Selene's face and neck in particular. But I like it. It looks good. It looks very kinetic, like he's moving, he's inking quickly. So Gath makes the point. Yeah, it takes a lot of his concentration and will to maintain the enchantment over the whole city. So he sends his warriors out to capture the rebels, and then we pick up with them in one of the Morlock tunnels, where there are wards at the entrances to keep them safe as far as that can be. And we have the various characters wondering what's their next move, including Amara and Rachel here, wondering whether their service to Selene is something that means that they don't really have a choice in relation to what they do subsequently. We have this interesting dialogue between Captain America and Storm, where Captain America talks about how mutants are a kind of a tribe, and also here we have Ileana asking him the question. This is the interesting part: whether if he knew that she was a mutant, would he have helped her? And so Captain America responds, "Among my people, youngster, for whom I am named, a person is judged by deeds. Everyone is created equal, free in body and spirit, with the same right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But I warn you, Selene and Kulan Gath are 2 of a kind." Right? So he's alert to the fact that the enemy of my enemy may be my friend, but is still my enemy at the end of it. Again, you can see here how quickly this must have been inked, but it looks good. Great colours by Glynis Wine as well, with the light of the fire showing against the characters' faces, especially in this panel here of Storm. Nicely done by Glynis Wine. And so Storm basically concludes, whatever the dangers, and the fact that they may fail, they got to try to beat Kulan Gath. And Captain America ends with one of his stirring speeches, and this one's quite good, where he says, "My entire life has been a crusade against evil, against those who would enslave their fellow man. There's no doubt in my mind, Aurora is right. Some of us are mutants, others aren't. But that isn't important. If who we are as people, if what we believe in is to mean anything, we have to make this stand. My friends, in the name of those Kulan Gath has slain and may yet slay, and the dreams he's trampled into nightmares, let the word go forth, Avengers assemble." So that's great, because sometimes I think like the Avengers assemble line doesn't make sense in the way it's used sometimes, but it really makes sense here, and it's very stirring here, and a really cool setup for the next issue, Raiders of the Lost Temple, part 2 of a 2-part storyline. And you'll note there's no letters page here. There was 25 pages of story. And as I was going through this, preparing it for the review, I rather felt that maybe the 2-part storyline, it feels like a story that maybe would fit an annual better. It's the kind of thing Claremont would do in an annual. Because even though there was a little bit of setup for it in the previous couple of issues of X-Men, there's no real follow-up with any of this storyline afterwards. And that's kind of the way that he handled the annuals, where you would have a done-in-one story. It could be galaxy-spanning in scope. It could be something like this, or the upcoming Asgard storyline. Now, there were some consequences to that continued out into the books after the annuals and specials. But in this case, I kind of feel like this is a 50-odd page story that maybe would have been a good fit for a 64-page annual. But nonetheless, entertaining, quite dense, quite a long read. Let me know what you make of Uncanny X-Men 190, and if you liked the video, please like it on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.